Welcome to the June 12th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Concord Historical Commission. We are conducting this meeting online in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The public may access this call through both telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on topics and discussions following the presenter's presentation and questions from the commission. To do so, please raise your hand at the participant function of the Zoom meeting platform. At this time, I will call on each commissioner for comments on a topic and then open the meeting for public comment. Once there are no more public comments, I will ask for a motion from the commission to vote on the application. At this time, I would ask for a roll call from the commission members to make sure we have a quorum. Members of the commission, would you please identify yourself? Starting with Doug.
Doug Ellis.
Lauren.
Lauren Meyer.
Nancy Frisella-Lee.
Nancy Frisella-Lee.
Melissa.
Melissa Sawfield, present.
And myself, Alan Bogosian. Did I miss anyone? I don't think so. And we have 1, 2, 3. We have a quorum then tonight.
Yep.
So the meeting is called to order.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I just suggest that we do, because we do have people from the outside present, we might want to reorganize our agenda.
Yes, that's a good suggestion. Yep, I was I was thinking of that. What would you like to see first?
Well, because I see the folks from MCI.
Yep.
Perhaps they should go first because they're here. It seems appropriate, and then we can do our election a bit later.
Yeah. Okay, I'm totally on board with that. John, would you like to jump on?
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. So yeah, my name is John Boynton. I'm a member of the MCI Concord Advisory Board, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues. Elizabeth Akehurst Moore is here. She's a member of the advisory board. And Maurice Robb is from a group called Defining Justice, Defining Spaces, which is part of the agency team. So they are in particular interested in kind of the historical uses of the property and how we can ensure that those are properly recognized as we go forward. So what we're going to do is basically, I'm going to give a little introduction. Anne and I agreed that we would keep this more informal, since I think a number of you have certainly attended our events already. Lauren and I have had a good conversation about her background in a project like this. And so I think most of you have a sense of what we're doing, but I'm going to share a few highlights, and we'll preserve the majority of the time for Q&A. And okay. Happy to stay as long as you'd like us to stay. And I'll just start by saying that the way that the committee is organized, we were formed early last year. We really hit our stride, I'd say, in the second quarter of last year. We divided ourselves into 3 subcommittees. We have a land use strategy committee, which is headed by Peter Lowett. Peter was not able to join us tonight. We have the legislative affairs subcommittee, which is headed by Elizabeth. So should you have questions about anything related to the legislative or governmental aspect of this, she's the source of the information there. And then I happen to be the chair of the community outreach subcommittee. So we're the ones who've had the pleasure of ensuring that we keep the community as up to date as possible on the project. So the way that we've done this, I think you all know this, but I'll just very briefly say that we've made a significant effort to ensure that the public is kept abreast of everything we're doing. The advisory board has met at times twice a month, sometimes once a month. The subcommittees meet at least monthly. Those are all open meetings. They're all minuted, et cetera. So in addition to those open meetings, we've done everything we could to ensure the transparent communication of a lot of information. We put together a stakeholder list at the beginning of the project with just under 100 different groups. Your committee was one of those 98 groups. And so the chair of your committee hopefully is receiving emails from us periodically. We don't send out a lot, but we do them once in a while when we have something particularly important to share. And we have a website that has a ton of information. And the address for that is mci-concord.org. And we've had over 4,000 visits to the site so far. And that is the place where we post all the information about the project. So we had 2 workshops, big public workshops, one on April 30th, one on May 28th. We're trying to gather as much input as we can from the community because we're getting to the point now where we're getting ready to form a point of view as an advisory board that we will then bring to the select board, who will then decide how to take action on our recommendations. So as an advisory board, we are advisory. We are not actually decision makers, but we're doing all the legwork to make sure that the problem is well understood and the opportunities are fully addressed. So it's been a great process so far. And I'm just going to, if it's okay, I'm just going to share a few slides from our a few pages from the website, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. This is always the most challenging part of the meeting, so bear with me. Let's see. Okay. Fingers crossed. There it is. Can we see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So I'm just going to use this as kind of as a prop to share some headlines on what we've been doing. So first of all, this site is the most up-to-date source of information available on the project. So should you want to know anything and everything, it's all kept on this website. We have materials from all the workshops we've held. Here you see some photos of those workshops. We've got kind of an overview of the project itself. We've got a nice interactive map that allows you to get a sense of what's actually on the site. You can zoom in and check it all out. We have links to both the town's site regarding the project and also the Commonwealth of Massachusetts site. And then we've got a pretty robust section on of FAQs, so you can just go into these things and click on them and open them up. And we endeavor to try to answer all the questions that we've been asked so far. So those are, for the most part, addressed in those FAQs. And then there are different ways to get involved. You can sign up for updates. We have a calendar of upcoming events and a summary of past events. And if you just want to leave a comment, you can leave a comment. The main thing I'm just going to point your attention to here, and hopefully you're already aware of this, is we have what we call the scenarios survey. And this is a survey that we circulated about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the things that we did send out information to our list about. Oops, hold on. No, I'm going to stop sharing now. Anyhow, the survey delves into, is really the best way for you to provide input into the different scenarios we're considering. So there are actually 3 different scenarios that we've kind of put together, and I got to give agency a ton of credit here. There are so many different factors to a project of this complexity. We're thinking about, what's the right use, the right mix of uses, right? We all know housing is of keen interest in Concord. We know that there's an historic preservation dimension to this. We know that there's a strong desire to see plenty of commercial, real estate tax generating real estate there. We have had a lot of interest expressed in recreational uses, both open space as well as things like playing fields. But trying to essentially survey a community to figure out how to, how do you describe, how do you capture the community's point of view on that? The survey does a really good job in pulling together a number, basically three different scenarios. One is called a civic and institutional campus. And that is basically the use is going to concentrate around civic uses, things like not just the wastewater treatment plant, but also potentially moving kind of the fire and the life safety stuff over there, moving Kai's Road over there. There's even been talk of the townhouse relocating to this property. That civic and institutional use would have some open space, would have parks, it would have a small amount of housing. The middle, and according to the numbers that have been put forth, that would have like, 300 units of housing. The middle scenario is called the Vibrant Center of Commerce. And this is, we talk about having like an innovation center, a bunch of like, offices and, potentially a university affiliation. We would have a more intensive housing use there. That would be, we're looking at that with 500 housing units. And then the third is called Thriving Mixed Use Neighborhood. And that also has commercial space kind of running along Route 2, but has a much denser use of housing. I think we have 750 in that scenario. But the idea is to begin to frame the discussion around different dimensions of what those different types of uses might entail, including one of the most important dimensions in the eyes of the advisory board, which is the economic impact of these different scenarios. I think there's a prevailing view at this point that we would like to see whatever gets built there be tax neutral to tax positive for the town, which means the real estate taxes that get generated should exceed the cost it takes to service this new development. So for example, when you think about the cost, there's fire and police need to be present monitoring the place. A significant cost potentially is children. Let's say that we had, this is kind of a crazy example. Let's say that we were going to build 1,000 units and require that everyone bring kids, right? The impact in the schools would be significant, right? We need to understand what that would be. So we have one sub-component of the team is a group that is actually looking at the economic impact of different scenarios and helping us quantify those. So that's a really important piece of the deliverable from agency. So that survey is out now. It's going to be available to the public until like the 22nd or 23rd of June. We've actually sent a mailer to every household in Concord, so hopefully you all got that. We've been passing out little postcards. They got QR codes, so we're trying to make it really easy for people to respond to the survey. As of yesterday morning, we had 164 responses. Doesn't sound like a lot to me, but agency says that's actually quite a lot of surveys to get back from the community. But I think, we'd love to see it finish at over 300 if we can. So I encourage you to encourage your friends and neighbors to respond to the survey. I think that kind of hits all the highlights. Elizabeth, what else warrants mentioning before we get into Q&A?
No, I just want to say I think you did a fantastic job, John. So thank you. There's still a lot of unknowns from our point of view, from the Government Affairs Committee. We're meeting with Mass DOT again next week. We're kind of doing periodic check-ins with them. It's unclear. Part of what you're talking about, John, with the complexity of the site is what's going to happen with Route 2, and that's controlled by the state and a different agency of the state, obviously. So a lot of unknowns. So it's a difficult project to get our heads around. But John, I think you hit on all the points.
Okay, thank you. Before I open up for Q&A, I just want to make, I think, one more important point on timing. The grant that we got from the state to fund the consulting that's going on, that money had to be spent and the work finished by June 30th. Okay, so agency, the lead consultant on this, has called it a sprint since they got engaged in late February, right? We've been running really fast. It's kind of, I guess I'd say not ironic, but it's kind of almost like dissonant with the idea that what we're working on here is truly it's a once in a century kind of opportunity. It's something that in all likelihood will take 10, 15, 20 years to really play out. And so we're doing our very best to come up with a point of view, as I said, and a set of recommendations for the select board. The most optimistic thinking and the plan against which we're sprinting calls for us to finish our work with agency by the end of June, put together kind of recommendations over the course of the summer that will be delivered to the select board. Then the select board will decide whether it likes what we've recommended and decide how to proceed. But the next step in the process is zoning, because right now that site is zoned industrial. You can't put any housing there, right? You can't put any retail there. So the site will have to be rezoned. And that's actually one of the key control points that the community has over, the state potentially just selling it to, Walmart for a giant distribution center. And I should say the state has been just terrific to work with. They've been a great partner so far. But zoning will happen in the fall. The planning board will go through a process to put zoning in place so that it can be on the warrant, in January of 2026 to be voted on at town meeting 2026. At that point, once the property is rezoned, then DCAM, which is the Division of Capital Asset Maintenance and Management, it's the department of the Commonwealth that actually owns the site or will own the site once the Department of Corrections turns it over. They will then go out and solicit bids from one developer, more developers. That's all TBD. It could be multiple developers, could be one. That bidding will have to happen. And then once a winning bid or bids are selected, then those developers will have to go finish all their design work, get permits for what they're going to build, and only then can they begin building, right? So the very soonest we'll see any construction on this site is 2028, 2029. And again, that's the goal against which we're sprinting. But we should remember that these things do take a long time. And Elizabeth made reference to the Department of Transportation and the big question about how Route 2 might be reconfigured. The DOT is not in any way encumbered by what we're doing, right? They can move at their own pace. And it makes it kind of challenging sorry, I'm just going to turn off that beeping in my phone. It makes it kind of challenging for us to finish a design if we don't know exactly where the access points to the site will be, right? One of the scenarios that you'll see illustrated imagines there could be a housing block on the parking lot across Commonwealth Avenue from the prison. Well, that might actually be a flyover or an exit ramp from a flyover, right? So we're going to have to see if we can mobilize the Department of Transportation, and hopefully Elizabeth and her team can do that. But, we're hoping that we can see some prompt action, but we're doing our very best to get recommendations in, and that's why it's so important for us to get community input now. So it was really great of you to invite us for this meeting, and as I'll say thank you for that and stop there. So if any of you have any questions, actually, Maurice, why don't you, if you'd like, you want to just spend a minute or two describing what your team is doing and how you participate here?
Absolutely. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So Maurice Robb, with Design and Justice and Design of Spaces. I'm a project manager. My background is in architecture and historic preservation. So my team, we were brought on as the consultants to focus on both the historic preservation aspect as well as community engagement. So we do work currently. We're an architecture and development nonprofit firm, and we do work around mass incarceration. So we were brought on as consultants to assist with this process. I mean, because this is a thing that's it's so many layers to it, as John mentioned, as far as a prison closure. The sites are so huge, multiple buildings. What do you do with it? And so, like I said, a big part of what we do is community engagement. And so we've been a part of the events. As a matter of fact, the two community engagement events that John mentioned, we were in town for that because we're based out of the Bay Area. So we were in town for that. I was there for both events. I was able to talk to people in the community to get feedback and understand their perspective on preservation around the prison site. So got a lot of good feedback, had some individual interviews. We were able to talk to people from every aspect of the community, me and my team. So we spoke with obviously at the events we spoke with Concord residents, but people who were a part of the prison outreach group. I met one lady who's also a Concord resident. I met one person whose grandfather was a former superintendent of the prison. So I was able to have a conversation with her and a group of other people who had ties to the prison site. So it was, I mean, this is what we do. You talk to people, you get their feedback and how they feel about the actual site, the buildings, and so, I mean, a lot of interesting conversations, a lot of good feedback, and I think what it came down to is that, at least from my conversations, there was an attachment to what people see, right? So people can't really, unless they have some association with what's going on inside the prison walls, most people in Concord don't know what's in those walls. Right. So they understand that, like the warden's house, that seemed to be very important to everyone that I spoke to. The worker's house, the last one that's standing, that seemed to be important, or preserving some part of the prison wall. So I do think there was, like I said, a lot of valuable feedback, but I know it was like a really quick process. I mean, you know, we got pulled in at the last second as well after agency took over this, and it's just been nonstop, just running. And I think it's been an awesome process. We've enjoyed it. I do wonder if, from a preservation perspective, if maybe there needs to be a deeper dive into like the historical context around the site, and how it relates to the history of Concord itself, because I think there's some deeper ties there. And with this speedy process, we haven't really had a chance to kind of to dig that deep into it. But I think when it's been an awesome process. You know, all of the committee meetings, they've been awesome. I feel like everybody is on board and trying to get this thing going. So it's been an exciting process. So if there's any questions you have for me about anything I've done, by all means. I'll say another thing that I've been trying to dig into is just, of course, you have to, if you're going to make this thing attractive to a developer, you have to start thinking about the financial incentives, especially when you start talking about preserving buildings, because, you know, very often it can be more costly for a developer to deal with a historic building than it is for them to just tear it down and start from scratch. So, yeah, so we've been digging into all of those things. Like I said, if you have any questions, just by all means, let me know.
Well, that's
Thank you,
kind of
Maurice.
why, Maurice, that's kind of why we've invited the group here tonight, because they're, you know, among ourselves, we've chatted and talked and identified some historically significant structures on the property, you know, in terms of everything that you mentioned, you know, the fountain, the houses, and we want to make sure that those are all taken into consideration.
Yes, absolutely. They absolutely should be.
Alan, you'll be glad to know that the point of view that the warden's house or the administration building is important. Everybody seems bought into that. I actually heard one kind of creative idea. Apparently, it's not that hard to relocate a building like that. Seems counterintuitive to me, but you can actually move them without a ton of effort. And one of the ideas was that, you know, take it away from the edge of Route 2, bring it into the heart of the site. Let that sit kind of as the centerpiece of whatever gets built, which is kind of a cool idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get to kind of the redheaded stepchild, which is the septic system, you know, on the 12 acres in the back corner.
Yeah.
You know that whole issue down there, which is definitely going to figure into, you know, how the money is going to work out for that project when it gets to be decided what we're going to do with it. So.
Well, why don't we? I'm open to questions, comments.
Yep.
Melissa's got her hand up. Melissa, you want to? Oh, look at that.
Melissa,
I think Nancy was.
Alan, I'm going to let you.
okay, so go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, okay. Well, a couple things. You know, Anne has prepared a pretty extensive document about this property, ultimately, which would lead to a grant application for the CPC to do a much more in-depth, I forget the terminology, but would be to research the property. Would there be time to do this? Because we would not be able to apply until this fall. Right, Anne, you're still here with us. So that's one question I have, because I think we would like to know more. We do know there's a lot of history associated with this property, not just the prison. Certainly the Civil War encampment was very important. We can presume that there was a native presence along the river there. So there's the archaeology there for that as well. That all matters to us. So that's one big piece. The other thing I just want to ask, going back to your three scenarios, are you sort of thinking that one of these three scenarios, generally speaking, might be what you would recommend to the select board? Is that part of your thinking?
I think not one of these three precisely, no, but something like them. So basically, the survey basically uses these three illustrations and then asks kind of which elements of each of those you like the most. So we'll pull pieces. So I imagine we'll probably pull pieces from each and come up with whatever we think is the optimal mix.
Okay, so again, timing. How is it conceivable that we would have the time for a proper investigation into this, to do a proper cultural landscape report? I defer to Lauren on helping on this question, but I think that's one of the things we would be interested in having completed.
I guess I would say it certainly is conceivable. Again, as I said, I don't think anything's going to happen here anytime soon, right? It's going to take a while. So the zoning and all that other work can still proceed. I think there will be time to do what you want to do. And this is the first time I've heard this mentioned, so I'll be sure we bring this back to the group and make sure everyone's aware of it. It's a good idea.
Lauren, do you want to comment on that?
With regard to the question about a cultural landscape report, I mean, I think that in some ways things can happen in a parallel way, so that John and his team and the whole team can be working on, the development of different ideas and the zoning and the historic. But in an ideal world, the historical information informs all of that. But there is some baseline information out there. We have Anne's great kind of first discussion about context. So I think the real question is this application to CPC, what should the scope be? And it would probably take a year to, that would be awarded next fiscal year, and then it would take several months to complete it. So it could inform, I think, work that happened at a later date.
I guess realistically, if the funds are granted at town meeting, they become available, I think, the following July 1st.
Right.
So it would have to happen in the second half of 2026.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Lauren, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I think Nancy had her hand up first. I'll defer to Nancy and then.
Okay, Nancy
Yeah,
Nelson.
I do have some questions.
I apologize for being late. I could not get in. There's no way. But I was intrigued. Can somebody fill me in a little bit more on the one standing building the one building that remains that housed
The what?
prisoners? Where there was some reference that Maurice made to a building that was still there, that was not the grand fountain, was not the grand administration building, but
I think he was referencing the
White
White
House.
House across
White House.
Concord.
Yeah, the workers'
oh,
house.
the White House.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I was just trying to figure that out. Thank you.
Any other comment or Nancy?
Mm-mm.
Okay, Nancy Priscilla Lee.
Taking my hand down.
Hi, I attended what was probably your last public forum. It was a virtual one, not an in-person one. And this is coming to mind because of what the Q&A from that session. And it wasn't a large group. So there were quite a few people who put in the chat that they were really questioning, why, because the presenters commented, maybe there could be some kind of little display or museum devoted to the MCI history as part of the whatever happens there. And people, said, well, why, what's important about a prison? That's kind of
Wow.
negative,
Well,
a negative
remember that.
connotation. And I think you might have been on that one, right, Alan?
I
don't.
remember that. Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and
Let's build more houses.
I couldn't, help but say, well, I'm a member of the historical commission, and there is a lot of history there. You just should be aware, and if you have time, look at that. But what I thought was, and it's not surprising. Look, not everybody is as interested in keeping up with what's happening with our historic preservation as people like us are. It's really not surprising. I know that. But I think that when you have those presentations, maybe there should be a little bit more time spent. Maybe that you should put together some kind of packaged little presentation that makes people more appreciate that. Or just maybe do an article in the Bridge, which goes to everybody. I think we need a little bit more community education. Again, not everybody's going to care, but we care. And, I knew someone who worked in the prison, so I appreciate both the old and even the contemporary, what happened there. A lot of important things happened there. And so.
Can I just say, apropos of that, the reason the prison is being demolished, right, or shutting down is a great story. It's because our state has been able to eliminate many the prisons, because we have, I presume, I mean, this is what I read, we've had a more effective way to treat prisoners, rehabilitate them, minimize sentencing. It's a positive story that I think we ought to celebrate.
That may, I think that's a good point. I can't confirm the facts of that, Melissa, but I mean, yeah, it does. I mean, there have been several prison closures, and I haven't heard about any new ones being built.
No,
Aside
unlike
from Charles Street Prison, but
other
yeah.
parts of the country where it's a thriving business,
Right.
it is not in this state.
I will say, back to Nancy's original point, that oh, sorry, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Maybe you're going to make the same point as you, that I don't think in any way the committee shares that view. I will just say that, for even though the rest of the committee is not here, that it's unimportant. The history is not important. The buildings aren't important. Of course, that has come up with us consistently. So I personally, speaking for myself, but for the committee, would say I'm not concerned that that's going to go unnoticed or undocumented, or attention's not going to be spent on that.
And I was going to say also on top of that, Elizabeth, that in the scenarios I think all three of them have some mention of a museum of some scale, right? So it clearly is something. There's history that the advisory board is very interested in preserving, in taking steps to preserve that history. So yes.
Good.
Yeah. By the way, that it's not a mistake that Maurice and his group are involved. It was something that we actually wanted to see, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I was really pleasantly surprised that he spoke out tonight. Yep.
Yeah, no, I was there when he was talking to the lady with who's, it's either the grandfather or her father, but I actually had her number for a while. She had great stories to tell about what went on at the prison. And so that was really interesting.
One of her good ones, Melissa, was about bringing lunch to her dad when he was working in the tower.
That's right. Yes.
So she would go over there, and they would lower a bucket down. They would put the lunch in the bucket, then the guards would bring the lunch back up.
Yeah,
Wow.
she actually had a lot of great stories, and I had a chance to meet with her the last time I was there. She brought a cousin and someone else who
Wow.
had ties to the prison site, and they had historic photos
Oh,
of, yes, inside the walls. She gave me documents, official prison documents, copies of official prison documents that tell you about some of the history, because her grandfather worked there until, well, he was the superintendent until 46 when he passed away.
Oh, wow.
And then you think of like the deep history of that prison site, like you all mentioned about Revolutionary War history, Civil War history, Indigenous history. which is all stuff that we should be looking into, right? But on top of that, there's the civil rights
Right.
perspective where you had Malcolm X incarcerated there.
Right.
You know, so all of these things tie. I was hoping she had some information when she said 46, because Malcolm X was incarcerated there 47 to 48. Her dad continued to work there after her grandfather passed. So I was curious if she had any documentation about Malcolm X being there or his stint there. But it's such a complex site. That's why I mentioned the whole thing of digging into like a deeper history. I actually had a chance to speak with Ann while I was in town. And so Ann Clifford. So we had a good conversation. And so I got some information about the site that, I mean, it's a very complex site, and with a very complex history.
You know, another thing is a lot of the, actually, I think it's going to be on our agenda tonight, the parcel of land off of Barrett's Mill. A lot of the housing that we see today was built because it housed people who lived and worked at the prison.
So that was the worker housing back in the day on Grove Street.
Yep, there, and then over on Prairie Street,
Mhm.
in West Concord.
Fun fact about that granddaughter of the warden, her maiden name was D, so she's part of the Charlie D family.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Maurice, they are one of the longtime operators of a funeral home in Concord.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Lauren?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Bear with me. First, big thanks to Maurice for your, talking about historic context, because that is so important to us. And it's just, music to our ears to hear that from you. And we're really grateful for that. And so glad you're on the team. So I think we all look forward to really, understanding the context around the prison, but really how it informs that site, informs the history of Concord in particular, and West Concord, more specifically. So I wanted to just say thanks. I have a question. I think it's an Elizabeth question, but in thinking forward to zoning and sale by the Commonwealth to a developer, I'm just wondering if there's going to be opportunities. I think certainly the Historical Commission is going to be interested in the zoning language, particularly apropos of historic preservation aspects. Second, I do wonder if there's going to be potential in your discussions with the Commonwealth to split apart the RFP so that it's maybe not just one entity, but there might be different parcels that have different goals and kind of parameters, if you will. That said, going back to some of the things that have been talked about, the financial aspects and ensuring that preservation that we can afford preservation with other kinds of development, maybe that doesn't work so well. But I think clear that the zoning needs to be flexible enough to achieve what you want to achieve from a financial point of view, but also achieve what you want to achieve from a community, point of view. But I think you guys have that covered. But I'm just thinking a little bit about the practical aspects of the zoning and of the RFP that DCAM releases. So that was just one thing. And then I think we'll all be really interested in that. And
yeah, do you want me to answer any of that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, okay. I don't have a good answer on the zoning because honestly, we haven't gotten into it too much. And John, maybe the legality is better than I do of what we can actually restrict and what we could just ask to have restricted. But I think you got to kind of the crux of the issue, which is we can ask for things, but we don't control the site. So, whether or not they're going to listen to us. John has said they have been good partners so far. And I know even as I mentioned with Mass DOT, we mentioned, the Warden's building is here. We want, we're talking about things that we want preserved. I think, John, we haven't talked too much about this, but identifying some parts of the site and asking that they be split off, or, I think that's totally viable. The question is, again, to your point, is it going to be economically feasible? Because this all goes out to we're not going to have a seat at the table for who they choose as a developer. And that's going to be the issue. Who can afford to do this? It's an expensive proposition. John, have you thought any more about I don't know, Anne might have looked more at the legalities of this. I don't know how much we can legally restrict through zoning.
Well, so
Historic
two
buildings.
parts to this, two answers to the question, kind of building on what Elizabeth said. One is, you mentioned the cost to a developer. Agency estimates that the cost of remediation of the site, i.e., taking down all the stuff that's there and taking it out, there are like steam tunnels under the property that likely have asbestos, et cetera. We don't really know what's under there. We haven't done any subsurface testing to understand whether there are in fact hazardous materials there, but their kind of finger in the wind guess is that it will cost $53 million just to get the site back to zero. Okay. So before a developer's going to come in, someone's going to have to spend $53 million to get the whole thing leveled, right? That's a significant investment. Do you give the land to the developers for free in exchange for them kind of doing all of that work? What, does the Commonwealth kick in that money? That's a big question. The second thing is that in terms of modernizing the wastewater treatment plant, that too could cost $25 to $50 million, depending on what you do. That's a huge question, right? And we know that the existing wastewater treatment plant we have is at capacity, it's actually beyond capacity. So nothing can be built there until there is wastewater treatment capacity. So you're looking at something like on the scale of $100 million, it will need to be found before stuff can actually be built, right? So that's one significant hurdle that we're gonna have to figure out an answer to. To the question about like zoning, I asked the same question on our last advisory board meeting, saying, if we don't have a perfect understanding of what might be located where, could we kind of zone different parcels in the site differently? And it sounds like the answer is we probably could. So we could say, this is the retail strip over here. This is the open space over here. This is where the museum and the nonprofit stuff's going to, whatever, right? So we probably can do that. Whether we would do something on an intermediate basis and say, well, we know that we want to have these mix of uses. One, we could just rezone the whole thing to say we can have housing, commercial, industrial, retail, whatever. You could do that too. But as Elizabeth said, we haven't really gotten to that point. We haven't thought through in detail.
Great.
And to the points before, I will just editorialize and say some people on the committee may not think that we need to push zoning as quickly as we're pushing it, because nothing's going to happen for a while. That's my point.
John and I talked a little bit about, project I was involved in, and the zoning is, I think, going to be really, really important. It's Concord's chance to shape that future as much as we can. So the best you can get a thoughtful zoning strategy, I think, is going to be really, benefit Concord in the long run. And these projects do take a long time.
They take time. I just don't see us having the time between now and when there's a warrant that needs to be done to get it thoughtfully and well done. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see why we're pushing. And I always think, personally, I know it's expensive, but a special town meeting would be an option for something that's this important. If we didn't have all the information that we needed yet. That's how, speaking to your point about whether we have time to do the historical survey, and I say we should take our time, because also in this environment, who is going to be coming to develop this land?
Right. And apropos of the special town meeting, I will say this, because John and I talked about, another project. I think that's a great idea. And the reason I think it's a great idea is that there's so much packed into town meeting, and we often get, folks who are interested in a particular issue at town meeting. And this is a chance to really focus on one of the biggest changes to Concord that's down the pike, and really get thoughtful feedback and community involvement. So I think a special town meeting is a
Yeah,
wonderful idea.
if there were ever time to use it, I agree with it. This would
Yeah.
be the time.
Yeah, great. And I have one last quick thing. Do you think it would be possible for the historical commission to see the site?
So I will tell you the Department of Corrections still operates and has custody of the site.
Yeah.
It has been extremely hard for even the advisory board to get access. We were given a tour one time. I happened to be out of town, so I even haven't been on site. You're not the first to ask. It would be great to do that. And that's something that we would love to do as well. So it's on our list of things to try to affect, but I can't tell you when it might happen. We've got a photographer who does, who wants to document the whole site.
Yeah.
And it's a great idea, but even, he can't get onto the site. We did do I don't know where it's kind of gone into a black hole or something, but about 3 months ago, we filmed the site with a drone in partnership with Minuteman Media. And we were going to create a video that basically said, okay, and as we fly over, this is there and this is there. But that hasn't emerged yet from the production team. So, but still, it would be awesome to be able to get on site. I'm sure that will happen at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe the way to do that is just for us to see if we get kind of identify one block of time. Do you know, Elizabeth?
No, I was going to say the same thing because I'm dying to get into the warden's building and I haven't been able to do it yet. But I did go on our first tour. And one thing that I want to put out there, just as we think about historical resources, is there's a lot of, to me, interesting fabric in the existing buildings that I don't think DOC sees as, when they talk, we're like, whoa, what are you doing with their stained glass in the chapel or whatever is out there? And they say, oh yeah, we're figuring out what we can reuse another building. They're not thinking about that. And just when you guys think about what we could take out of there, even in terms of bars or, things for museum, I kind of want to have that in our mind so that the state doesn't just go in and not care about those things.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Nancy, Fasella Lee?
Two things just on that last point about, I think that's what you said is important, that there could be things that, once there's demolition going on, pieces that should be taken out. So I don't know, maybe we could write a letter, or just you could bring this message back and say, maybe, the time is not now, but not lose sight of that. And, just try to pinpoint a time, or sort of a deadline by when that could happen, so it doesn't get forgotten. I don't know how much.
Yeah, no, I think it's a compelling argument to have more people and you guys visit the site as well. I mean, I'm thinking even down to just random posters that have been up there forever that no one is going to think about.
It's really special.
I will bring that message back. But
the other really minor thing that might not be relevant here, but I know a very sensitive gardener, and he has told me, he's like, do you know about the trees that are on either side of the fountain? And he thinks that there's special sort of rare trees, and that there's some vine growing over them. He said, I would hate them to be killed because no one's caring for them. And so I don't know, maybe it's not important, but he even offered, he said, I would go and do it for free, but he's not going to obviously go and work without getting permission. But I just wanted to bring that up, and just a small point, but we do care about trees in our town.
To the point about Elizabeth, preserving bars, posters, whatever, we can certainly bring that back, but I think it would be good for you guys to go on record. And if you guys, the two big ideas that I really appreciate coming out of this idea that you want to put together, a cultural landscape report, that would be a great thing to put into a letter. And then the idea of getting access so we can identify elements of the prison that should be preserved. Those are two great ideas, I think. And again, it'll just ensure that you're kind of in the record, if you will, if you guys were to put together a letter suggesting that.
Okay. I think we've actually already started that, Lauren, that with bits and pieces of that. So, yeah. We will definitely do that.
Is anybody else doing photo documentation? of anything on the interiors of these buildings yet?
Nothing has been done yet. that we're-
Nothing. Okay. Is there objection to that? I mean, they
I
just
don't
don't
think we
want
have, we
people.
don't have access to the.
Yeah,
to the-
they just don't want people, well,
The
I
Warden
think it's just
building
the-
still had all of its documents in it, and I don't know if those have been taken out
Oh,
yet,
okay,
John, or not.
okay.
They said there was still
Yeah.
privileged information, but it's worth us circling back and seeing what kind of access we can get.
yeah, I think
But
so.
I do think that it's unlikely that the site is going to change in any significant way anytime soon. So
Yeah.
anxious as we are to get in there,
Right.
Yeah,
I think it's going to still look pretty much the same in 6 months or 12 months. So let's.
yeah, yeah. Okay, good.
So Nancy, no, you can't fly your drone over it. No.
Actually, they have what's called a geofence. So you can't actually fly a drone over the prison. When you
Oh,
call,
Can I ask about that?
it blocks the drones. The drones can't actually fly over.
interesting.
Right, Doug, you have a drone.
I
You can
do.
Right.
see
So
the
That
I,
makes
back.
sense that there's a geofence around the prison.
right.
Yeah, so
I
well,
have one as well. So
You can get right up to it, but you can't.
John,
get
I
over it.
will disagree a little bit with there being no time pressure, because when this gets transferred, as they keep saying it's going to be transferred, again, just someone walking through that from a random department in the state, not caring about things.
Yeah.
Personally, I do think it's worth
Yeah.
getting in there sooner rather than later.
we kind of want to see it when it's a mess.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to
Not
take bars
fixed up
out,
and
but
cleaned up and
Right.
all,
yeah,
An original mess.
the original mess.
the original.
well,
All right. Any other questions?
are there any other questions or comments?
Ooh, big
My
project.
only comment is, I'm glad to be able to support what you're doing and make sure that it moves forward in a responsible way.
I do have one further thought. Our commission oversees an oral history project that's done at the library. And, Maurice mentioned he met that woman whose grandfather was a superintendent. I think someone came to us who's maybe her grandfather too was an architect of the prison. Is that right?
I think
Or maybe another prison, but
Kate
related.
Chartner's father was a prison architect.
Yeah, okay.
HDC chair.
I guess my point is that, while these people are here and because this project is so, topical in our town, that could be too something that we don't want to lose sight of and should be done sooner rather than later. I have a young friend who worked at the prison and had a really interesting experience there. So, there are people like that. She had a very moving experience. And there's Diane, Di Clymer, who started the outreach program.
Yeah, she and
She's probably talked about it before, but
she has. They do have an oral history of her and of Nancy. Help me, Gordon Bell's.
Jean Bell.
Jean Bell, and
She was huge. Thank you for bringing that up.
yeah, she
Sorry,
was-
one thing about that, Melissa, I hadn't followed up with you about it, but I know I emailed you back in February about Nancy Crowley, who raised this same point because she knew some of the original owners were still, yeah, she's across from you, right?
lives
And
right
she had
there.
mentioned, because she grew up there in one of them, and
She
she
grew up in
mentioned,
one of the White Houses. That's right.
yes, but she mentioned that someone should reach out to the people, I'm reading this, grew up in the house that's still standing because she knew that they were still alive and they had grown up. And
Oh,
before,
wow.
to your point, and I know you had mentioned that the library program had kind of died off.
Well,
But I know she was very interested in doing that. So
for some reason, Emily and Anka from the libraries said they would come back to us with kind of a their suggested how to go forward. Part of the issue is we don't have someone who's doing the interviewing. I had arranged to have Carlene Hempel. I don't know if you know her.
Yeah.
She's here was Concord, a journalist.
yeah.
She's done some interviews. Maybe if it's okay with you, Alan, I will just reach out to Emily and Anka tomorrow and say,
Sure.
The other question I had was, would any of the high schools have any interest? I was thinking about Kim Fredericks at Concord Academy had been involved. I don't know, just an idea if you didn't have anyone else to do interviews. It might be an interesting project for high school students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of somebody owning it. No one owns it. That's
Right.
it's fallen through the
Yeah,
cracks.
no, I
Well,
can see
Melissa,
it's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
you guys could probably include a component for this in your CPA application.
That's a great idea.
And because I think once you have some budget, you can hire someone who will
Yes.
be accountable, will make it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, the library would love to have, you're right, whoever said that the oral history program has kind of stalled out a little bit. It has.
Oh, totally. Yeah, ever since Leslie left, well, that we had that outfit, that came up from West Virginia, but no one was happy with them. So we just don't have the interviewers.
Hmm.
It might be something good for the high school kids to get involved with, like you said, so,
Yeah.
okay. Well, Maurice and Elizabeth and John, we thank you, three of you, really. This has been great insight, and we'll continue this discussion.
This I think, is a really special group, not only because of your passion for the subject, but it's the first time I've ever heard the word apropos used 3 times in an hour.
By one person.
Right.
No, it's by 2. It's by 2.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you all.
Okay,
Thank
thanks
you.
everyone.
Thanks, Maurice.
Bye.
Thanks for joining, Maurice.
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think I'd like to say if we can move ahead with the subdivision application for Barrett's Mill Road while we're on the topic, because it is close to the prison. So if there's no objections, can we move right to that? I don't know if anyone's read the Ann's memo on what that division was. I think it's the Marabella.
Yeah, that's what it is Marabella's old
It is.
property, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the one, do you remember a couple of 10 years or so ago, or 15, when they were hauling mulch out of there? Remember?
Yeah.
I do. Yep.
And I couldn't get it anymore. And I was like,
Oh,
So
what?
I wasn't, is our responsibility apropos of this? That wasn't clear to me.
I think this is just a notification as to what they're proposing. We can look at it and read about it, but I don't think we
have no authority.
right.
But isn't this the Historic Commission's role as advisor to other, entities? So, but I defer to Anne on that. But that's my understanding, and it's beyond just the regulatory approvals, but you have a advisory responsibility. So if there are, issues related to historic resources, proximity to historic resources, then I think you have a seat at the table to provide input.
That's not specifically in our charge, I don't think, but it certainly doesn't prohibit us. Our charge is broad enough that our concern and advocacy is out there, right? But it's not, I don't recall it being specifically mentioned. But I think we can do it, and I think we should just push it.
I think you ought to listen to Anne.
Yeah, Anne,
Where's Anne? Oh, there she is.
you got her hand up. Yeah.
So, right, I recently found in the subdivision rules and regs, since we've been doing historic preservation planning, we've been sort of digging into the other, bylaws and things. And it does say several times that the properties should be reviewed for, their impact to historic resources. And, I often do get emails sent to me, but I think it's really something that the whole commission should have a say in. And
So that's in the subdivision guidance,
yes,
right? Okay, subdivision guidance includes a recommendation that the historical commission should be consulted or something like that.
So
That's good.
but in this case, as I read it, there are 4 houses being proposed.
1 acres.
Lauren, I mean, I'm still a little unclear what, other than, you know, you might want to name it after the street, but all we can do is advise about street names too. But what would we?
Well, can I jump in on this?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Here's my
Please.
thought that in a situation like this, I mean, what I would do is I would say, well, you have the plan for the layout of the subdivision. You know, thanks to the materials that Anne pulled together, what the historic resources are within a general area. And so question number one is, are there any historic resources directly affected by the proposed subdivision? That's question number one. Question number two is, will this subdivision have any effect on any surrounding areas? And I think, you know, it's a little bit like a Section 106 review, right? You're looking at what the effect of this proposal will have on, you know, cultural resources. And, you know, I think just the quick look at everything today, it seems to me that the biggest concern might be the view shed, you know, related to the farm. But I don't know enough about the site itself to know if you know, and then there is the little cape that's on the site that you can see on I looked at the assessor's site to see there's this, you know, cute little cape on the property. And, you know, that's another example. I assume that would be a tear down.
Probably.
And, you know, it's another loss, right, of a modest, you know, house, but it's the post-war, it's all that post-war housing. And I don't know if you could determine if there was any significance there, but really what you're interested in is the effect that the subdivision will have on any cultural resources.
Nancy?
A minor point, and that is that Barrett's Mill Road is one of our roads that was designated a scenic road. So I don't know if that impacts if, you know, if views from the streetscape are important. We certainly,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's I mean, that was my road, but in that section, I don't remember if there was a stone wall or anything like that, or trees, but I don't think so.
Not where this is being proposed. There aren't.
This is right
Um,
down by the
This is-
rotary.
And it's specific in the language is the trees and the stone walls. It's not about view.
Yeah.
But I do think that is what Nancy mentioned is, you know, if you were going to write a letter to the planning board, right, just to sort of elucidate what any concerns the historical commission might have, that, you know,
It's
the
part of
kind
this.
of effect
And
on the scenic road should be one of them. Yeah.
But you mentioned, Lauren, the view shed. So the view would be from the homes to the farm. So whose view are you disturbing?
The view from the farm.
Okay, so which is a prison, reformatory. Well, I'm just
Yeah.
asking. I don't, you know, I
Yeah.
personally am distraught that they're going to build this because they're going to be just like what they're developing across from me, just giant houses that they're going to sell for $4 million, which will go, you know, encourage them to knock off all the rest of the houses in that area instead of something reasonable. But that's my
Yeah.
complaint.
So that's a land use issue.
Concrete problem.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly.
Right.
Hmm.
Ann Clifford?
Hi, so I can actually bring up Google Maps so that you can see what we do with the HDC all the time, of course.
Yeah.
And you know, as I was looking at this today, you know, there was a plot map from I forget what the time period was, but you know, 20th century that did show stone walls. And as I looked at Google Maps, it did seem, as if there was a stone wall
On the
there's a
property?
stone wall there. It's a low stone wall, but there's a, you know, a wooden fence up above it. But let me,
I'll have to drive by because I don't remember. I took so many photos.
The Marabellas don't own it anymore, is obviously, so it's, but I couldn't clear, who owns this now?
That they still did.
The farm stand, I mean, the nursery stand or whatever, you know, I used to go back there and buy plant stuff. That's closed though, right?
Sold out to this, I thought the Marabellas still owned it.
I didn't see their name in any of the documentation, so I didn't know.
The sign is still outside the driveway.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, what I was thinking, could we drive back there and see if there's a stone wall?
Sure.
I'm looking on
no,
Street View right now. I don't see a stone wall.
it's very low.
I mean, I'm seeing a few scattered stones. It's not even, they're not even continuous. They're not
Remember
even,
we
not
were
even next to
supposed
each other.
You know,
define
that could also be that in my readings, that could also be a prospective archaeological site because there was a lot of Native American habitation in that area.
But do we know that it is? I mean, we have no basis.
I don't know. I'm not that, you know, I don't know the precise locations.
That could be
I read it,
anywhere
but
unless we
it
know
could
something.
be, no, I know that it could be anywhere, but when I studied when I was doing my research for that road, I remember reading references to that was an especially, you know, used site. I don't know where, but because it's near it's not that far from the river, or the river bends there. It's a little bit, well, it's a little bit back from the river. It's across from the street from the river.
Yeah.
So I would want to do, you know, be able to look into that a little bit more.
If I can share my screen, I can show.
Yeah.
That too.
And,
Maybe Doug, you'd be better at this.
I'll have to send.
Oh, well done.
You have to let
It
me.
is, okay.
Oh, the sign should go to the sign museum.
Well, there's a stone wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So that's probably a boundary wall, right?
Hmm.
I think that fence was probably put up on the boundary, and that does
Yeah.
signify, yes, the boundary wall. Yep.
Yeah. And I thought I saw a historical photograph of that boundary. So, you know, you don't know exactly where the property line is, but you know, that could be a recommendation that the existing stone wall is protected,
Yeah,
right?
that's beautiful. I don't remember it as that beautiful.
Where is the stone wall?
And I would screen it from the farm. I know it's part of the prison, but you know, we're also really, you know, on a kick to evaluate the prison in a broader context. And so I think that wooded backdrop is important.
So, Lauren, a question. Some of these other developments, they have just denuded the property of trees. Do we have any say over protecting the trees?
Well, you know, you do if you have if you have a defensible cultural landscape. I'm not sure you do in this case, but it was part of Barrett's farm originally.
So it has a long history of being a farm, right?
Yep.
I think you can say, we think it would be to Concord's benefit to preserve as much of the mature tree canopy as possible.
Along with the stone wall.
Along with the cultural resources, including the stone wall and the view from the farm to the site.
But I think
that should be maintained as a wooded edge.
Okay.
But I think there is a tree bylaw.
Well, there is, but I'm not sure it would apply back in there. Like it didn't matter to across the way here, and those are beautiful trees, big trees, old.
Yes. Do we know that they follow the procedures for that?
No, no, probably not.
It's the tree protection is within a very limited external envelope, I think.
I think, yeah, but I think if what Lauren's saying, if we can,
Preserve the existing. Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
we
yeah.
could at least
It says,
try.
preserve trees that are over 6 inches in diameter in a lot setback area during major development projects.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the
The lot
bylaw.
setback area is pretty narrow.
And if it's not feasible to save it, the owner or developer can still remove it and plant new trees elsewhere to compensate.
There you go.
That's typically why they clear cut a building lot and then they go through and
Right.
plant all the new trees.
Or they can pay into the tree fund, which the town uses to buy and plant trees in Concord's residential neighborhoods. So, that's kind of a cop out.
Yeah, no. Well,
Yeah.
I like what you said first. We could request that because it is along the property line. It would,
Yeah.
if they're going to save any tree, those trees logically could be saved.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now they're going to have a little bit of a challenge from a construction point of view because they're going to have to bring in heavy equipment. They're going to have a staging area, and but
And
we
they're taking out a couple of 100 cubic yards of fill out of there as well.
It looks like there might be, from what I could see on Google Maps from the aerial perspective, are there wetlands back there?
I think so.
It looks like there might be.
Not according to this application, I don't think.
No,
Right.
but I think there are.
Well, there's a 100-foot buffer, I think, on the wetlands, right?
Well,
Just
if
beyond
there
the-
are wetlands.
Well, then that would, natural resources would be triggered on for that
Right.
if they're
Yeah.
approaching on that.
Well, I'm just wondering about my computer's too smart for me. It's not telling me stuff I don't need to know.
Right. Okay.
Be happy about that. Mine's pretty stupid tonight.
Yeah. And isn't there some kind of special designation in this area? Didn't I see that somewhere?
I don't know if this infringes upon that designation though, does it? I mean, across the street you have where the workers were for the prison, that whole Grove Street area, but I don't think other than that.
That wouldn't preclude a development.
No. No. So I don't know if there's any action that we take on this.
I think you write a memo to the planning board is the action. Saying, the historical commission has reviewed the proposal, and in our capacity as advisor, we offer the following input.
Comments, yeah.
Right? The following comments. And you highlight that it's in an area with known cultural resources, that the road is a designated scenic road, that the, well, it hasn't been fully evaluated. The prison farm is likely a cultural resource, and that the existing cultural resources on the site include that are known, include the stone wall along the boundary. And so that's just facts. And then, our recommendations are to preserve as many mature trees as possible, to preserve and protect the existing stone wall, and to protect the wooded view from the farm. That's what I would do. It's short. It's maybe 2.5 paragraphs. But, you just get those specific points. And if anybody else has anything to add.
Sounds very reasonable.
That was excellent.
Do we have
Why
a
we need you,
volunteer that
Lauren?
wants to take that out of the minutes and put it in a memo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can do that. And I could even just have it, it could be from the commission or it could be from me, just providing them a summary of the discussion.
Yeah, I think Anna could come from you, and it could say the commission has reviewed it, and yeah, I think it's important to provide feedback. You're not saying don't do it, but providing feedback and in a timely way. And
So why shouldn't it come from the commission? I mean, what's the downside of it coming from the commission? I mean,
I don't see
Yeah.
what difference.
we get to weigh in on virtually anything we think is worthy of comment, right? So I wouldn't feel bad about it coming from the commission. But either way,
Yeah.
it's nice to be able to have some input.
yeah. Here's what I saw. It's within a wetlands conservancy district, it says.
Well, they've got some constraints then.
I think if you kept going on the road towards the Marabello little shop, if you kept going,
Yeah.
it's wet.
Getting wetter.
Yeah, it looks like it is from the aerial.
Goes over a brook, I think. There's a
Yeah.
bridge.
Yeah. And getting back to what Nancy Nelson said, Ian, I would agree that it should probably come from the commission. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever you guys think is best.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Put our name on it.
I think that's a good suggestion. Yeah.
Great.
You're off the hook, Ian.
Gives you some support, maybe. Yeah.
Mhm.
Great.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. And how about if we keep going right down the list and talk about Hanscom, about the new hangar project? I know.
Oh, here we go.
I know.
I was gonna contact Save Our Heritage, Katie
Yeah.
Winchell, and I did not have a chance. I'm really sorry. But I know that our feeling would probably be pretty much in line with Save Our Heritage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to do that.
That was my thought too, reading
I,
through.
I mean, I don't know if anyone else has looked through the proposed changes, but to me, it looks like just as a modestly scaled back version of what they originally
Yeah.
proposed.
Yeah.
Nothing. So I mean, my opinion hasn't changed at all.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anyone's opinion has, but
I had that feeling.
So I have a question. I was away and I've only read, when I saw this and I read it very quickly, I thought I had also seen an article in the Globe that they've already awarded the use of this hangar to some company, right?
Yeah, something like Merlin.
They
I
have
remember hearing.
a tentative proposal to lease it out to a company in California.
Yeah.
And the proposal says that they've looked at other sites. They're looking at other sites in New Hampshire and Connecticut, but this is their preferred site, but their lease is going to run out. So they want to expedite the application because they would like to start building in fall and have it done in a year. So they're putting pressure on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that company, I believe, is doing like autonomous small planes.
Hmm.
Oh,
What does that mean? A non-piloted?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
From here to Long Beach.
Correct. They're not big private jets, but I mean, that's the first
They
step.
still spew out fuel.
They do,
That's the future.
and they're loud.
They
And
estimate 2 to 6 flights a day in this report.
For
Yeah.
now.
So what do we, I mean, we say no. But,
I don't see any grounds to change our stance at all.
no.
Yeah.
No, no more planes.
Right.
Yeah.
Thought we told them that. but-
So does that
Save
mean
the
we need
heritage.
another letter?
You could just say,
Um,
please reference our, whatever our last letter
I
was.
got an email. They've got a they're doing a presentation, and you can keep me honest and tell me what the date is for that.
I think it's June 25th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone who submitted comments to the on the last round is on their email distribution. So I did. So I got the proposal as soon as there was a new proposal, and they're doing something on June 25th. Yep.
But Doug, isn't construction all set to start on this hangar? Were they gonna start doing the demo and they're gonna start revamping it, or?
How can they do that when the whole review, the governor hasn't given her a final approval?
Yeah, this is just a notice of project change. It didn't say that it's
They were
just a resubmitted proposal.
Well, they're claiming that they're trying to get out of what they call the DEIR. I forget what that stands for. I have it written down somewhere. That
Draft environmental impact
yeah,
report.
that because they've separated it out and just have this one hangar, that it's
Yeah.
not significant enough that they're obligated to do that.
Ah.
So they have all of these little, not little, but
Oh, it has to do with the scale of the project. Well, mass.gov.
And they're going down instead of going up.
and it's adding 140 parking spaces besides the flights.
Yeah.
Mosquito.
Overall. Yeah.
Well, then I think we either write a new memo or we reference an old memo, but we still oppose any
Expansion.
expansion of air traffic at Hanscom.
Right, I agree. Can we just maybe just write something, say we oppose whatever you're planning on doing? That's,
Ever, whenever.
yeah,
Are they soliciting comments right now? Do we know who we would send it to?
It's a notice of change, I thought.
There's an
just a
article
thing.
in the Concord Bridge.
I think there is an open period for public comment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
July 11th.
July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Anne. Oh, she went away.
Through July 11th.
July 11th, I think. Gosh,
Okay,
Anne,
so
for
they're
some reason
accepting
I'm
comments.
hardly hearing you.
well, should we put a letter together as the commission, send it off to them?
This says 1 or 2 flights per day, but
No.
No, what I read was 2 to 6, the average.
okay.
And that was just Merlin, right? There's nothing to do with this hangar.
Oh, right. You're right. Yeah, thank you, Deb.
It's
And
just
thank you.
their way of getting the little camel's nose under the tent.
Right,
The
Yeah.
hangar, I mean, they cut it back from 31 hangars to 18 hangars.
but the
But the
sizes
hangars
of those
are
hangars are
bigger.
gonna increase.
But they're hangars.
Hangars are gonna increase.
You
The
can't
size
tell
will
me add
increase.
18 hangars and not significantly increase the air traffic.
Nothing ever does, right?
Yeah.
This is so tiresome. I'm sorry. Doug's probably been watching this for about as long as I have, and maybe Melissa too, but my goodness, it just keeps going round and round and round, coming back and coming back.
Referring to it as the second Battle of Hanscom. The first one was in 2000-ish to 2005, right? When you were superintendent, and now
And before that, actually.
it's the third battle.
Yeah, at least.
Or the 100 Years' War. Take your pick.
And they're gonna do what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
no, I do slow down sometimes, and I think
opposition has worked.
yeah,
Yeah.
to some extent, yeah. Some
It's
extent.
not done yet, so
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you wanna write that memo, Doug?
sure,
Mhm.
I will write the memo. I'll draft it and
You should look at what Anne put together previously.
yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving along. So the next item is, so we have the election of the officers. So my term is expired. And 2025 it's up. And so I'm in the process of stepping down. And I was also asked to go on the planning board. So I'm gonna go on to the planning board. And I also wrote a letter today to the liaisons, the select board, and the liaisons to our commission, because I know we're having a tough time getting new members on the commission, that I could stay on the commission, if they'll allow it,
Great.
you know.
Do we have
Yeah.
a liaison now, that the select board has changed?
I think it's still,
Cameron,
McKenna. McKenna.
Yeah, Cameron, right.
Okay.
Cameron. Yeah, thank you, Cameron.
Yeah,
We haven't voted yet on who the select board liaisons will be. And I think they're gonna vote, it's either June 30th or July, whatever their next meeting is.
Okay.
What are they voting on? I'm sorry.
The liaisons for the various.
Oh, gotcha. Because there are new select board member, at least one.
That's right.
but
Oh,
So, Alan, there are a couple things. One,
Yeah.
we need to elect a new chair.
right.
The other thing,
Yeah.
we do have new slot or more slots to fill. How would we've talked about like 3 different names. Can we talk about that too tonight?
Sure. Yeah. The potential applicants for the commission.
Because I think it's worth us reaching out to people and talking to them and getting a
Yep.
sense if they're interested. I think maybe then inviting them back to a meeting.
Yes.
are we allowed to know who those people might be?
Well, if Alan says I can, I will say. I think we've talked.
Yes. Yeah.
I think my term has expired, actually.
Oh.
So that's something to think about too. I
Yeah.
didn't check before I came, but I think so. So I have a 1-year appointment.
Yeah. And I don't have a problem with Melissa letting everyone know.
I just think we all need, we should all be thinking about potential members.
Yeah.
And discuss them.
Can I make a comment first?
Yeah, yep.
Because you seem to already have some names, before you discuss that, I want to say that as we have already talked about, it is hard to recruit members. I appreciate that. And, we want to get the appropriate person. However, I think, and I hope other people agree with me, I think that we should do something a little bit different. I think we should write a letter and post in the Bridge, because that goes to every citizen. And no,
I agree, but we've done that.
and the
Yeah.
okay, well, the reason is because, new people move to town and they have, backgrounds that might be very useful. And, even if you just reach one person who hasn't, you say we've done it in the past, that's great.
No, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Because I also don't think tonight we are necessarily picking somebody.
I just wanted to say that because I just feel like I didn't realize that we were electing people until today. So
We're not electing new members. I'm just proposing we discuss it.
Office.
Yeah, we're just talking about names.
Clear. I understand that.
But we are electing a chair, right?
Right. Well, that's what is.
Yeah.
I was going to continue and say,
Sorry.
as I step down, I would like to nominate Doug as the new chair. that
Okay.
that's what I would like to say moving forward.
You know what you guys are getting.
Is that a motion that we should vote on then? If so, I would
I
second.
think we should need to have a discussion first.
Well, do you have somebody to nominate?
No, but I have, this is very awkward for me, by the way. And I wish that I didn't have to, I'm disappointed actually that I have to even speak like this. I think you guys should be bringing this up actually. I have been on the commission longer than Doug, and I'm a full member. And I've already, in fact, Alan, we've already spoken about this today, and
Mhm.
I was hoping that after my conversation, you would bring this up rather than awkwardly me having to do it. I just feel that there should be, this commission has not been consistent in the way, well, I'm not sure if it's been consistent with the way that we've elected officers. And I would hope that there was some kind of policy in place that was similar to what other committees do. And I feel really, this is very uncomfortable for you guys, and I'm sure you know why. I've talked to Alan about this today already, and Melissa. I'm just going to be really upfront about this. And I was ready to, I prepared, I thought about this and I thought, okay, I thought about this a lot today and I thought, okay, Alan was honest and he told me that he'd already approached Doug. No one ever asked me if I was even interested. And I would hope that we would work together as a team. And I would hope, I felt very good about the discussion that we had today. And I was hoping that you would say, that you would take a step back and say what had happened and say, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. And I've talked to someone I talked to Dennis from the HDC, and he said, no, they follow, the sort of, they have a chair and a vice chair, and they rotate. They take turns. One person is the chair for a year, and then often the vice chair will step up. And they do, it may not be written in a policy, but they do consider sort of the seniority. And I just now, I was hoping, I was ready to say, because I didn't want to make Doug feel uncomfortable, because Doug, I'm sure that you would do a good job. And if you want to do it and you have the time, that's fine. But I hope you would put yourself in my shoes. I'm a town volunteer. I have dedicated a lot of time to this committee, and I did the Tercentenary project, and it was very, very it was very difficult at times, as you all know. But I loved doing it, and I learned a lot. So I actually feel like if this committee doesn't have that, I think, of course, there would be mitigating circumstances for someone who is sort of next and, who's been there longer, that person might not be appropriate. But that's not the case here. And I might not, I didn't even get a chance to think about it. And apparently Alan has already asked Doug. So you have had a chance to think about it. And I'm not sure that I accept it, but I hope that Doug, if you do become the chair, and I think you will be, that you as a committee will now say this isn't right, and that you will set a policy so that all volunteers, anyone who joins this committee, will feel that it's equitable and they're part of a team. And because the joy of doing this committee work is working collaboratively, and I now have less confidence that I can do that. And I'm really sad to say that. I'm really sad that I was put in a position to do that, actually, even after 3 discussions today. So,
Thank you.
Sorry you feel like that.
Yeah, me too.
But Lauren?
Well, thank you, Nancy, for sharing your feelings. I think that's really important. And I think it's a sign of a healthy organization where you can, in fact, share your, thoughts about things like that. So I think that's a good thing. I was simply going to add that, I mean, I'll speak from my personal experience, in a different group. But I will say that being effective chair takes time to be, in my view. It takes time to get up and running. And I think it takes a year to get your sea legs under you, to just get the cadence, to understand the issues, to know who to go to keep meetings on track. It's an executive function. And it doesn't mean that, other members aren't valued. But to have the chair change every year, from my perspective, would be not desirable. That, however, I will say that in 2 volunteer situations I've been in for decades, plural, both a town committee and a national park committee, often there was always either a chair, vice chair, or co-chairs. And it is useful to have a co on board, so that then if the chair can't make a meeting, then the job of being the meeting facilitator falls to someone, very specific. I mean, I'm new. I'm the newest one on the bench, and I've enjoyed this a lot. I defer to you guys who are long-term, Concord residents, know what's best. But I do think that I have no desire to be chair personally, but I do feel like, it's possible to be a contributor
You would
in a
be
major
very
way.
chair.
That, the chair
And you
is
are the most qualified.
You are
facilitator.
the most qualified, Lauren.
You have the most experience. So, but that's, of course you do. And there's no doubt about that.
Well, that's because that was my job.
I
Yeah,
understand.
right. Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
I think
But this
one thing
involves-
is, I mean, I've been around a long time. I was on this commission many, many years ago. There was not much structure 20 years ago, and there really hasn't been. I think there's a tradition among some department or commissions and committees in Concord that do have more structure and consistency. Ours doesn't happen to be one of them. I think it is also one of the recommendations of this preservation plan that we do establish some routines. Because to me, I agree that I think it would be useful to have a vice chair system.
Yeah.
I was chair for a number of 4 years or so, and I will say I agree with Lauren. It took at least a year to understand what I was doing, and then to kind of feel you could take the reins and
Oh, breath of it.
direct, kind of direct something, and also understand the routines of these meetings. So a vice chair position would be really important. So it's unfortunate, Nancy. That's what we were talking about this afternoon. Because I know it's no structure.
Mm.
So, I still, I've already heard all this and thought through this, and of course, it all makes sense. I'm still in a certain position that is very awkward. And as I said, I just learned about it today, and I am not saying that I would have agreed to be chair, but I really actually think this is whatever our traditions are. I think we better get some rules set, and so that nobody needs to feel like I do, because I'm a dedicated volunteer. I'm just not, I just don't show up at the meetings. I put a lot of time in, and I really care about the committee, and it's, so and I also want to say that I think I understand, Lauren, your point is very important, that I definitely understand that stepping into that role is difficult and is an adjustment. So I'm not opposed to someone serving 2 years. That's just what, the historic districts does, and I think our commission, if it ran in a different way, I think that, there's room for mentorship. I have always thought that, whoever is the chair can sort of mentor if we had a vice chair, but all the new members. And to be really honest, and I didn't want to say all this because I'm really disappointed that this discussion is going this way. Because now I am put in the position of pointing these things out because I am going to step down. I've decided right now, I don't feel comfortable now. And, there have been times where, there have been opportunities for mentorship, Melissa, every time, like when Alan is, away, you've been chair, and I think, you've stepped up and you are fantastic. You do such a great job. I am full of admiration for all of you. However, that didn't give me an opportunity to try that role out, or anyone else on the committee. So, and then with the preservation plan, that was your project, and again, it's necessary. It's a fantastic project, but there were opportunities. There were so many interviews, and I thought there is a lot of work going behind the scenes, and that was another mentorship opportunity because you all do know so much. You've been in this for so long, and I was trying to make connections with people who work in all the historic organizations, and I wasn't invited to a single interview. And again, it's an awkward position to always have to point things out. I'm disappointed that I need to, and I'm sorry. So I really appreciate all of you. I think Anne does a great job, and I'm sorry.
I'm sorry you feel that way. That's yeah, I didn't want it to come down like this, so I apologize.
If you had taken a step back and after our discussion and just given a little bit more thought, I think that this could have been avoided. So that's why I'm firm in how I feel. It confirms what I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry too, Nancy, but I also think we have a motion on the floor. So, and we need, I'm sorry if you're serious about leaving. That is too bad, but we still need a new chair. So was that a motion, Alan? I'm just trying to
Is it, Lauren, do you have another comment?
Yes, I did want to just add that I did pull up the member list, and according to the list, Alan, Michael Capizzi,
Oh, Michael.
Lauren, Nancy, all have,
Priscilla Lee.
no, Nancy Nelson.
I'm not on the.
Yeah, you're 2025
associate members, but we all have
Yeah.
2025 expiration dates.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
We'll all have to be
I'm expired, I think.
reappointed.
Well, and one of the other things that I wanted to mention is I would like to make a motion that we raise Lauren to a full member on the commission. And because you expire as an associate, I think,
Right.
this year.
Yeah.
So that's if we can do that motion.
Does that mean I can vote? 1, 2, 3, 4.
That means
2, 3, 4, 5. That would, no, probably still not.
I'm
What
abstaining.
about what
Huh?
happens to Nancy in that case? Does she get reappointed, or
Nancy Priscilla Lee.
Nancy Nelson?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I probably am not. I'm probably expired in May, I think.
Yeah, that's what the.
well, it's after the town meeting because nothing took place before. I think, right?
Yeah.
Nothing took place before the town meeting, so
Right.
And I
I think it's the end of June, if I'm not mistaken.
It's after
So-
town meeting. I thought it was after town meeting. Once town meeting's over, that's the end of your term.
Well, for some, I mean,
Yep.
that's the way kind of remember it, but you still have a quorum without me, I think. So I don't need to vote.
Yeah,
And you can.
But you'd have to be reappointed as an associate member.
Yes, correct,
right.
Yeah.
correct.
But the motion that I made was to raise Lauren Meyer to a full member of the
Oh.
commission.
Okay, I can't vote, so I won't.
Well, I'll second that.
Okay. So we take a vote on that to raise Lauren to a full member. And Melissa,
Aye.
Doug,
I,
Nancy, Priscilla Lee,
I,
and I vote aye.
Yay.
And but isn't that I'm sorry, confused a little bit. Isn't that something that the select board does?
Well, no, we would have, you need to get yourself reappointed.
Yeah.
I think Alan or Ann or somebody has to go notify them that for.
Right, then I write an email.
Recommendation.
vote on that.
Right.
Right. And then I just have to go do the thing.
Right, then you have to get sworn in.
Yep.
That's right.
Right.
Okay. But we skipped over the original.
Right, so now back to the original.
Motion.
The original motion is I nominate Doug as the chairman, taking my place. I think it's a 2-year term, right?
No, you just re-vote it. I don't think there's a term. I didn't have a term.
Right.
Because mine, okay,
That
You're-
goes back to the heart of it. We don't have traditions like that. There's no, you just got re-voted.
Probably what you need, apropos of, Nancy's, comments, is it seems now is the time to create a structure. And, I'm sure there'll be lots of different ways to slice and dice that. But for that to be an iterative process, have everybody involved in the conversation, and that could be part of the outcome, right, of the preservation plan, which is to kind of continue to get the house in order.
yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I like about the Masonic organization is people are not in the same station forever.
Yeah.
right,
You cycle through, you have your
Yep.
term, and then you kind of move on to the next thing.
right,
And that's very healthy, I think.
Yeah.
It's very,
yep.
Yeah.
nor would I want.
What's
to
happening
go
in my
away.
case?
So since I can't vote, I also can't second, so.
So, well, I'll second your motion.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. So let's take a vote. Melissa,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. And could Doug vote?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yep.
Aye.
and Lauren.
and Lauren?
I'm
Thank you.
associate member.
We have 3
Oh,
votes.
we have 3.
The 5, we
We have
don't.
3. So
Okay,
it passes. So congratulations, Doug.
Thank you. And thank you, Alan, for all the work that you've put in. And I mean, I do have to say that, I'm humbled by all you guys because you guys have vastly more experience than me. I mean, the best I can do is show up and learn from all of your experience that you've had before. So, I just hope I can fill the shoes.
Well,
But
one thing I would
But I will do my
recommend,
best. I've got years of experience as a project manager, and I will use that experience and just, if nothing to more than keeping things on track and following where we are.
Yeah. I mean, I think that job there's a reason why CEOs move from organization to organization, because it really isn't about whether or not you know how to make razor blades
Yeah.
or you're going to make iPhones, right? It's about, how to run an organization. That's what the chair needs to be. So I think, It'll be great.
And to that point, something we also took note from one of Nancy Friselli's prior comments about meeting notes is I will be doing notes shortly after each meeting. So I'm doing my own recording and I will be using the help of AI to draft notes and attendance and all of that.
Well,
So
we all-
I'll have them within, hours or, a day maybe.
Oh, that is so great.
So I'll at least have it and it'll be fresh on our mind the next time we talk about it.
I think that's great.
That was my greatest bugaboo as a
So I
chair.
think that's absolutely key to, at least when you walk out of a meeting, to know,
What you talked about.
what are your action items
Action items, that's it. And you don't want to see the action items the next month.
for 6
Yeah.
Oh my
months.
gosh, I was supposed to call X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Very good.
And we're going to have a whole lot of stuff coming out from the historic preservation plan.
Yeah.
Well,
If
that'll
we
be
can
very
do it.
helpful. Although one thing I would recommend, let's never hire that outfit again.
Oh, yeah.
Don't note that down, Ann, but that has been,
Hard.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah.
well, thank you for, our knight in shiny armor in the form of Lauren, because you and Ann have put shape to something that was amorphous for a year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
If we had 3 minutes to talk about it, I would love to.
Mhm.
I don't think it's on the agenda, but
Is there another business?
The only business left is the minutes.
in it,
So we can approve the minutes. And then go to give Lauren the floor for 3 minutes.
I'm going to time you.
you can.
So
Yeah.
we make a motion that we approve well, is there any other business?
No.
I did, I guess the question about Walden Woods.
Oh, boy.
I wasn't, that was just past information. That's
Yeah,
there's no action required on our part on that either. I didn't.
okay, good,
Yeah.
They're just
okay.
informed of what they're, to take back. They're going to take back the woods.
Right. But I thought we talked about that a couple of meetings ago, no?
You're referring back to Elizabeth Hughes' email message to everybody about where they are and what they're doing. I missed one of those meetings. Is
Yeah,
that what
I
you're
thought
talking
it was done 2 months ago. I thought.
Maybe the new visitor center and all that stuff that's going on with boardwalks and whatnot. Is that what you're talking about, or something different with Walden
Well,
Woods?
that's not Walden Woods project.
Well,
That's state.
That's the
That's
Walden
the-
Pond
That's all in
Reservation.
one.
No, I mean, I
You're
think
talking about Kathy Anderson,
Right.
and what is she doing? But I'm sorry,
I mean, I don't know what.
I
this-
totally
this is-
blanked on this, I
This
guess.
is documents from a past meeting, but I mean, remember when they came to us, they took down the house. They're trying to recreate the
Yes.
landscape,
Yes.
rebuild, and eventually they are very interested in the former dump site.
Yeah,
That is a great, and I don't, well, I mean, we may have a role in that, but the town certainly does. The operator of the DPW.
mm,
Yeah, I would think.
So I don't know if Kathy is proposing that ultimately they're going to buy the land from the town. I don't understand. There's the whole land swap that I never quite understood with the white ladies here by the prison. That's another prison.
Oh, okay, so I just need to go back and research whatever it was.
But again, I don't
It
think
sounds like it's a little amorphous anyway.
I think it's informative right now. I don't think she's asking of us. She asked about the house.
We wanted something done at town meeting, maybe. But anyway, okay, never mind. I'll go back.
We need a motion to approve the minutes.
Ed Larner is raising his hand.
Oh,
I was trying to yeah, I just want to thank you for letting me sit in here on the meeting. I work with Nancy and Ann on the CPC together, so hopefully with the projects this year, we kind of not shortchange the preservation, but we after a long time of a lot of preservation, money being spent, money being spent on preservation. There wasn't much left after it wasn't much. The project last year didn't take as much as they're supposed to, and so money was put into the reserve. So
Yeah.
and so hopefully the building behind me, the Emerson Annex, had a history with the Historic Commission
Yeah.
back about 15 years ago, and they
Yeah.
still have issues, but I think we're going to be able to work out with Ann and Nancy and I working together on these things to come up with a project for it. So just want to introduce myself as somebody you might see again here. So thank you.
I saw.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, we love that building.
It's a beautiful building.
Beautiful.
And trying to convince them to do the longer, harder thing by making an application to CPC is something that Ed has really been working hard on and helping as much as possible.
That's great.
So,
Well, just I think we will be successful, and it'll be a feather in the preservation,
that's
and
beautiful.
historical commission's cap.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful.
So see you soon, Ed.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed.
Definitely. So thank you for letting me sit in. So,
Thank you.
and just one note about Hanscom Field, I guess, and this may just be internet talk, but I guess they're going to be the military side will be the transitions or whatever they call it, the loading zone for all the immigrants that are going to be put
Oh,
pushed
yeah.
out of the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Hanscom's been announced as the main spot for New England. So.
Is that right? Have you seen an announcement to that effect? Because I know there's a group of people who are looking particularly at Signal Airline and monitoring the incoming and outgoing flights that they're having with full passengers aboard.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think this was more of an internet chatter. So
yeah, okay, yeah. So a lot of people are, leaving town. And Signature Airline, I think, is one that's really quite big that people have done a lot of research on, and I know that they're going to be doing standouts at Hanscom Drive and on those days. So keep an eye out.
Interesting. Okay. Back to the minutes again. We make a motion that we approve the minutes.
So moved.
Is that all sets? Or
Any
are you
discussion? That's January 9th, February 6th, March 13th, and April 3rd.
I look through them, they look fine to me.
Looks fine to me.
Okay. Fine by me. We take a vote. Doug,
Aye.
Second.
Melissa,
Aye.
Nancy,
I
and I vote aye to approve.
Yeah.
Okay, under new business, Lauren, 3 minutes.
I just have okay, you start your watches.
Got it.
I really have, it's a question for Anne. I know we have a work session tomorrow morning, and I just want to kind of understand where we are and what we're focusing on, because the draft was much delayed from Heritage Strategies, but I don't think I'm going to have the capacity to review it before 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Me. In fact, I wasn't sure really what I was supposed to be reading there. So once again, and this to you.
Yeah, I know. Here we go again.
This has been the problem for the last year. It was you could never get your hands around it, whatever it is, despite Anne's brilliant efforts to rein in Elizabeth and her writing.
Theoretically, we're supposed to be looking at a complete draft number 2.
Right, so they.
Right. We did get some other, I mean, it's like the beep, 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 beep from all directions. She did also send, a little bit about historic context. So we have that document also. But I just wanted to, some a sense from Anne on where we're going tomorrow with all this.
Exactly, right, so initially I'd put out the agenda to focus on the full draft.
Yep.
What we were expecting to receive on Monday, which was actually a week late.
Yep.
But then on Tuesday, they said they wouldn't be able to give us the full draft, so I did revise the agenda, and so instead they provided the historic context piece. So I did just revise the agenda to focus on that.
Okay.
But right, I'm and then today at maybe 6 o'clock, maybe 5 o'clock, we did receive the full draft too, but maybe it doesn't make sense to meet tomorrow.
I'm just wondering if, given that, we've had a meeting this evening, I mean, I will do what it takes. I will. I'll be there for you. But I would love to have the weekend. I'm finally done with all of my other stuff, and I'd love to have the weekend at least to read this thing. But I wonder if we find another time next week, early in the week, to meet.
Okay.
I know you have to give 48 hours notice for a public meeting. I mean, what do other people think?
Well, I'm glad you brought the question up because I wasn't sure. I thought, well, I'll just go, and because I have
Right.
have been unprepared every step of the way. This is defeating. There's so much there's important information that they have provided us, but
Yeah.
this the basic, these are the top 5 things we have provided, and really is provided. So I don't see any point of meeting if there's nothing to react to. And if in fact she really did send it this afternoon, then now we would all have access to it.
I can distribute that. So would you like to meet earlier in the week, next week, or just meet on Friday?
I mean, I think we've got to figure out how we're going to keep this moving to meet some semblance of a deadline.
Yeah.
That's the big deal. I mean, I want to read it once, and then I want to, and just kind of step back and take it in. And then I want to go back in and look at it in detail. That would be how I would do it. But that's going to take a couple days. So
I mean, I couldn't meet until next Friday anyway, because I'm working.
yeah.
I've got a HTC meeting on Wednesday and pretty full days.
Did you hear Melissa? Ann? She
Well,
might have heard you.
so I mean, I know what Lauren is encouraging us to move on it because we have kind of an end date that we're trying to meet.
Yeah.
But if we're not prepared, I mean, could anybody else meet on next Friday? And if by that point we could have read it, so the one question, this is her draft, but we are still providing historical context. I thought that was something that she was giving her thoughts, and it was coming from us, though.
We gave her, Anne and I worked up a document that had at least a list of topics as we discussed the topics that we discussed at our last meeting. So it wasn't new stuff from us. It was the stuff that was discussed at the meeting. It was a list of topics and some possible contributing resources.
Yep.
And so now Heritage Strategies has taken that and written a little narrative to go with each of the topics. So
Okay.
that's it. That's what we have. So that's something. So we
Yep.
have the basics of a historic context section now.
And then the rest of what she sent is the draft. Is that
Is
right?
the draft, correct.
Okay.
Without, it's just straight text.
Based on what we've seen so far, how confident are we that we're going to be able to use their document anyway?
Well, you could use your magic AI. 'Cause it's,
Saying we can, I mean, we can rewrite it or, you know, Anne can we can maybe use that as a starting point and then Anne can take it and.
I
had
think
started-
we should try. The town of Concord and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are paying these guys. So I think we should try to get as much as we can out of them in terms of content.
Yeah, final product.
But, and whether it looks pretty, it's, you know, got the, you know, the formatting and everything,
Agreed, but everything they've given us so far is unreadable.
I wouldn't worry about that, but we need
Oh,
the content.
We need we need the content.
Yeah.
but it has to be readable.
So
Well, we have to rewrite the content, but I think they've given us a lot of stuff. It just needs to be.
could
Well-
I comment, please? So I had looked at the historical context document. I was, you know, ready to sit down and go at it. And I spent an hour on the first 3 pages. It was so convoluted and poorly written. And
Yeah.
I wrote to Anne and I said, Anne, this is so poorly written. It's so rambling. It's unprofessional. And I am willing to put in hours on this. I'm willing to spend time doing whatever I can offer the commission. But I think it's a waste of our time to meet even on Friday, even on just this document.
Yeah.
And I had this discussion with Anne this morning, and she said, "Well, you know, let's still meet," and I agreed to do that. But you know, my opinion is that we can. Lauren is right. We should get our money's worth out of them. They're going to be paid, I assume. So yes, but what I would be asking, the question I would be asking, who is going to now? We have had so much time with them, and there's absolutely no indication that we're going to get a final product that any of us would want to put our names onto. I certainly wouldn't. And who's going to take on that task? You know, and rewrite something that this committee would be proud of and that would be useful. We've had the same discussion so many times.
I know. I think you're, you know, everybody, you all are right. I mean, I'm the new kid on the block, and I wasn't involved in the plan initially. I just got in, you know, in the third act because I couldn't help myself. But I'm eternally optimistic. I mean, I think we should really look at this draft. I mean, one of the problems that happened with that thing they called historic context, it was basically just bits and pieces pulled from what Ann Forbes had done.
not
And,
new
you
scope.
know,
I had recognized that it was not just not bits and pieces. They lifted it, and
yeah, exactly. So
unprofessional is that?
it was terrible.
Someone else's work that was a previous preservation plan.
There we go.
We're back. Okay.
But,
I'm so sorry. I know you gave me 2 minutes on this, but
Important topic.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that I always felt in this last couple months, as we were going through stuff, that this draft was going to be the critical one. And I don't, Michael Steinitz didn't agree with me on that, but I think this is the critical draft to really, really look at in detail. So that's one point. The second point I want to make is that one of the things we talked about in our last meeting, Nancy, I don't think you were there, is what is historic context? And what they gave us was history of the development of Concord in a, as you well put it, in an unprofessional, it was done quickly. They pulled and grabbed and just dumped right into a document. And it really wasn't something that any of us felt we could include. And so I think Anne has always felt all along that, Concord should do that in some way. And so that's one thing. And so then that's why we focused on what a historic context really is, which is themes in history and how they were. And that's really, in some ways, more interesting because there's so many books and articles and pamphlets and tours written about the history of Concord that other people have done much better than Heritage Strategies. But what we need is what you do in historic preservation, which is to understand the meaning of this. What are these broad themes, these trends in human culture, human history, and development? And so that's what we're pushing Heritage Strategies to focus on, and for it to be concise. So that's just a little bit of, my reflection on what's happened with this problem in the historic context piece, which I agree with you. You're absolutely right. It was not something that we would ever want to include.
So should we wait till next week, Ann, till next Friday, or we don't want to get
You're on mute,
tomorrow.
Ann. And you're on mute.
Friday would work for me, but I could try to find time earlier in the week too, if you think that would be better.
And I'd be willing to still meet with you tomorrow if we just want to talk like timeline, project planning.
Right, I know I'm nervous about that. Could we read the document first and then maybe meet? Like, I think I could meet on Monday. Or
I'm gonna sign out, guys.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Night,
Bye.
Nancy.
Bye.
right, I suppose I could meet Tuesday, maybe between 10 and 2. Or Wednesday, yeah, Wednesday anytime.
Either of those would work for me. Except I do the town tour on Wednesday at 1. And I usually get a crowd.
I want to come on one of those.
Do it. It's fun.
I really do.
Yeah.
I need that.
What do you think, Lauren?
I think that the project management side of this is really critical. And so one idea would be for Doug to help you with the project management side, and I'll dive into the weeds on the preservation plan.
And I'm even thinking about how can we break this into smaller pieces?
Yeah. And I will say, having my son was here again, and you know, he's a huge AI user, as I've said, and but he uses it, it's a tool. It's
Right.
not a substitute for his work, but it's
Right.
a tool, and it gets him where he needs to be
Yeah.
much faster and much more efficiently. And
Yeah.
he's using it for coding, you know,
Yeah.
mostly, which I think is very, very, but I think particularly for our summary piece document that we might want to put out, it could be handy. But I think meeting next Friday to go through the plan, I mean, I could meet early. I'm willing to come in earlier than that if I can find the time.
Yeah, I might need the full week just to,
You think you need a full week to go through it? Yeah.
because I have so much else I have to do too.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
full-time
everybody.
job.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go with Friday
Okay.
for our regular, and the goal would be, let's try to get comments back to them fast. Ugh.
Right. I know,
Okay.
because I go on vacation too. On the 26th.
You going
So
to Cuba?
Sorry?
You going to Cuba?
No, I wish. Just up to Maine.
So that would be a goal, to get those comments back to them early the week of the 23rd. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm perfectly willing to redline it. Comments and redline the whole thing, if that's useful.
Definitely. Yes, and I'll get into that depth too. And
Okay.
our comments align, of course.
Yeah.
And then Doug, do you think we should meet about the timeframe for the project?
It doesn't have to be for long. I mean, I think just getting together,
Okay.
and because I know it's making us all nervous. Just
sure is.
what are those
Yeah.
milestones, and for that to happen, you know, all the other dependencies.
Right. What are all the trick?
Uh,
What's the trickle down?
And if it's not going to happen, then let's just, you know, face the music and say what can happen, or just be able to be out front of it.
I think if we got a revised draft, you know, in time for them to do an invoice, you know, a third draft, I think that's what our goal should be. And I think the idea that we're having a public meeting this summer is probably not.
I was feeling the same way today.
Do you think? Yeah.
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 I don't see how we could.
Or unless we push it back to, you know, I was looking at the schedule, maybe on July 31st, but that seems
Yeah.
so late.
So it might be also that, now she sent the draft to Michael.
Yes.
So the other thing, Doug, you might consider is then looping Michael Steinitz in. Doug and Ann, just to make sure that they're okay with, I mean, I think we're all on the same page that we want this to be successful.
Yeah. Put a lot of time into it for it not to be. And if you're going to do it, it's got to be.
And I suspect that Heritage Strategy wants it to be successful because they want to be able to say in their marketing materials, we did the historic plan for Concord, Massachusetts for the 250th anniversary. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
I sure would want to be able to market that.
I don't know that they're going to get that right now.
Right.
Because I don't think what's going to be out is going to be their product.
Well, I'm still optimistic. I am looking forward to reading the draft. I just can't do it by 8:30 tomorrow morning.
No.
Did you send the draft in?
No, I just received it.
Yeah, okay.
like, shortly before.
It just came in like right before the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
mentioned it. But I haven't seen it.
So can you put that on our Magic website?
Yes.
And
I'll send it around too.
okay.
Right, and we'd hope to meet with Michael Steinitz, the 23rd, 24th, or 25th, but I don't see how, I suppose I could.
Why don't we go ahead and do that? Because then you will have feedback. You'll know what we think about the draft. I think we should do that.
Okay. And right, he has the copy too, so he'll have time
To
sometime
look at it.
between now and then to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to thank you guys all and say it's been a real privilege to be.
Oh,
the chair.
Alan.
And I really appreciate you guys and your knowledge and your mentorship. Really helped me along. So it's just been an incredible journey these past couple of years. So I really appreciate Ann, you, Ann, Lauren, Doug. It's thank you. I can't say enough.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, we feel the same
Real
about
pleasure.
our
Yeah.
fearless leader, right?
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
it's been an honor.
Yeah,
Thank you.
likewise.
We good for tonight?
I think so.
The
I think
meeting's
so.
adjourned.